Hi, Whapio. Um, Welcome to my podcast. This is Ananta's Well, the Thresholds podcast. And I wanted to invite you here because you are just one of my most beloved mentors and teachers in this life. And I really, everybody who learns from you is just blown away by the depth from which you speak, and not only in birth work, which is kind of the foundation of what you do, but it seems that your wisdom pervades into so many other aspects of life, and we all get so much from your programs. So I studied with your program with the Matrona a few years ago now, and did the midwifery program. And I'd love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself if you'd like. Share a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Well, I would. All right. And thank you, Ayla, for the opportunity to do this and for having me on. I'm Whapio. I've been around in birth for 40 years plus. I spent 20 years going to births and then another 20 years teaching about birth and women who taught me what they wanted from a caregiver. And I have come to the teaching place because actually women have said, Whapio, we have taught you well, go and teach others. And I'm like, okay. So I've created a couple of programs along the way, a holistic doula program, but I feel like my most relevant offering in my life's work is the Birth Keepers Midwifery cohort. All right. It's a year-long devotional to birth, at the end of which you will be amazed at how confident and competent you are when it comes to the realms of birthing, and how wise and compassionate you are when it comes to the realms of wisdom keeping in birth. So if it interests you, you can go on our website. It's thematrona.com.
Awesome.
How's that? Thank you for that moment.
Yeah, it was an incredible program. And, we delved into all aspects of life and kind of our own ideologies and really unpacking our own soul a little bit so that we can approach birth with a bit more ground under our feet, and also, I think a wisdom that does not come from just any, source of learning that is commonly found these days. And so homeopathy was a big piece of that as well. And a little bit where I wanted to start today, because I've ended up, because of you, got into Robin Murphy's homeopathy program and found, so much amazing stuff in there. And he talks a lot about, he brings up these little stories, these little anecdotal stories that to me speak to the work that homeopathy can do psychologically, spiritually, to kind of integrate these pieces of ourselves. And, when I think about midwifery today, and where we're at, it feels, and I'm curious if you feel the same, it feels like we're on the precipice of something, of a big change, that kind of, this wave that came in, maybe 40 years ago of, okay, we're bringing back traditional midwifery, we're having births at home again. But now, we're kind of at this place of a crossroads, it feels like, or we need to make some kind of quantum leap, which, you use that word a lot because you have this quantum birth keeper program. I'm curious, first of all, do you feel the same? Do you feel like we are at the advent of something new, or trying to get to the next level with our work with women?
Well, yes.
I'm kind of a duh, but yeah.
Well, honestly, needs to be clarified too,
Yeah.
that's what we are doing. All right. And if we're going to do it without fear, all right, so that's why we have to say, well, this is what we're doing. And we're on the precipice, as you say, because the world has got our attention now. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, after COVID, we started to pay attention to things like, okay, because I know so many changes take so long to happen. All right. Eventually they will. But when you get everybody paying attention like this, oh, you can go right through. So I am kind of excited that I have landed here, chosen to be here at this juncture of the evolution of humanity, if you will. All right. I feel like we came so that we could, I don't know if there's a threshold, that we're on. Well, where are our elders, wisdom keepers, professionals, even, do you know what I'm saying? People who have studied a long time for this moment. Okay. And I feel, yes, we're really ready to go. We are. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like there's been so much, I think there's a lot of ideology in the home birth world that can be trying to distance ourselves from obstetrics and from, the modern model of care. And yet, it was an important part of our evolution. And so there's the evidence-based birth kind of crew, if you will. And then we have, very traditional midwifery roots. And I see a lot of us, myself included, trying to find this way to merge the two into something new, to create something that isn't quite traditional midwifery, but has a good, strong taproot into that, but also integrating the knowledge that we've gained from modern medicine, and coming to a place not only of merging that mentally, but, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, being able to hold a place for women where we are informed, but we still have, a really good foundation in, palpation skills and intuition and, these things that no school can teach you. You have to cultivate within yourself and, hopefully maybe find a mentor who can help cultivate these things with you and for you, so yeah, it's exciting, and it kind of brings me back. And this is, a big piece of what I wanted to talk about today. There were a couple of lectures in your coursework about becoming everything on the planet. And I just love that, concept, because it feels to me that that is not even just in midwifery, but just spiritually where we are on the planet right now. We have suddenly this internet access to anything. I can go on Google Earth and zoom in on any place on the planet and literally see what the streets look like and maybe even the people there. It's just incredible, our, this global mind view that we now have. And so, we're in this process of kind of integrating, it seems, and figuring out, okay, well, I have all of this and now, but where am I in that? So, in homeopathy, I wanted to just kind of open the floor a little bit because I feel like homeopathy is a great tool for that. And as I get deeper into it, it's like, it has some amazing acute uses. Everybody knows, take arnica when you have some bruising or if you get, in an accident of some kind. And then there's this deeper layer of homeopathic psychology. And, we got into some of that in our course with you of, the sepia woman who is kind of like me, loves thunderstorms and is very wild and free. And, Robin Murphy, though, he kind of speaks of the constitutions as being the cell salts. And then we have these layers on top of it. And something that you had mentioned too is, that it seems that a lot of us these days kind of have a lot of layers, and a lot, like maybe not one constitution or one major theme, but kind of can hop around from different layers to another. And I feel like that's just so expected in such a huge spiritual awakening process, that we would kind of be a little bit awash in a way, and kind of floating between different states of being and needing different remedies at different times. And so one thing that came up for me, and I'm curious if you've had similar experiences, some of these kind of remedies that are known for having maybe a little bit of a darker undertone, or I don't even want to call it dark, but like lachesis, which is the Bushmaster snake venom, and can be used when people are angry. And Robin Murphy mentioned actually the idea of putting it in squirt bottles, and I had the same idea, like, can we just put some lachesis in a water gun and just shoot it at people, because he's had experiences of throwing this water in someone's face and they were in a rage, and they literally went to sleep. And I've had some experience with Scorpion as well, and my stepson, who has 6 planets in Scorpio and is a very, very ruled by Scorpio person, very kind of brooding,
Yeah.
And he was getting into kind of an angry mode at one point. And so I asked his dad if we could put him on the Scorpion remedy, and it really shifted things. And it was the only remedy he would ever have considered taking. Like my stepson, we told him, well, this is Scorpion. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll take that. But it's this integration of the shadow pieces that to me is fascinating. And of course, there are so many other remedies and energies on this planet that you can choose from homeopathically and otherwise. I'm curious if you have anything to say about that, or any stories or anecdotes along the similar lines.
Well, I mean, about homeopathy in general. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, it's the medicine of the future. All right. It's the medicine of the present, but it hasn't gotten its hasn't gotten really popular yet, because people are still afraid of things. And here's my thoughts with homeopathy, because it's really energy medicine. And energy medicine now really works well for our culture. Why? Because we are less dense than we were 40 years ago, 80 years ago. Energy penetrates us now, okay? You don't have to do 5 or 10 Reiki sessions. You do 1 now, because we accept that energy so well. So that to me is an understanding of we are ready. If we accept it more readily in our bodies, then we're ready, okay? And I feel this way. I feel like we have relied on a medical system for many years, and the medical system has done well in its intentions. It really did. It purports to heal us, make us better, make things more comfortable, make things more conscientious to just for women in birth even. But we've outgrown it. All right. And it's not like we need to end it all or even switch over. What I think that one of the words today, along with quantum, is, because quantum is sort of like a jump ahead or somewhere where we're going. But another one of those words is expansion. The universe is expanding. It's not contracting. So if we're going to just follow a guiding principle of the universe, we too should be expanding rather than negating, contracting, being fearful. All right. But change is always fraught with fear. Why? Because change really requires you to go outside your comfort zone. And people don't really want to do that. They don't know if they'll get back. All right. So we have that going on. So here's my thoughts with homeopathy are there's no need to divorce ourselves from the medical system. Maybe we had to do that, all right, just to show that there's a holistic system and a medical system, and that, homeopathy might belong over here in a more holistic system, whereas, scans and testing might be more the hallmark of the medical model. Well, sometimes we need those things. And when I talk about birth, there's a very practical understanding of how birth unfolds, but there's also a holistic understanding. All right. Why don't we put them together instead of saying one is better than the other, or we should get rid of one in favor of the other? Why would we do that? When we expand, we don't do that. When we expand, we don't push things out of our realm. We incorporate them. So this is what I'm hoping, that the newest incorporation and the biggest and best, perhaps, incorporation in medicine, all right, in the field of healing and birth and whatever touches on that, is that we make room at the table for everyone, all right? We make room at the table for doctors to do what they do. And you know what? We are not in charge of what people's choices are. Somebody could say, oh, well, I made the wrong choice. I should have gone to a homeopath, but instead I had something cut out and it grew back faster and more immense. Okay. So the problem is not that. The problem is you when you don't make a choice, when you let someone else tell you what you need. Oh, you don't need that homeopathy, or, oh, you need homeopathy. Don't go to the doctor. You see what I'm saying? We're cutting ourselves off. And we're not really in alignment with what the universe is doing, what the solar system is doing. We live on a planet that's ready to expand. This is what I think we were talking about a minute ago, in the sense of, what about this day and time? What are we all here for? We're here to expand. All right. We're here to take all the things that we know and incorporate. We're here to multiply, not divide. We're here to add, not subtract. All right. And it's just like this. When a mother has a child, all right, and she thinks, oh, I love this child so much, and she gives so much to this child, and then she gets pregnant again, and she thinks, how am I going to divide my love between these two children? Well, she learns that you never divide your love. You multiply it. All right. And that's what I'm calling for. Not a division, but a multiplication. And it's all already, there's a template for it. Okay. Now, once again, back to the fear. We have fear because we are uncomfortable with change. All right. We think it's an interesting thing that every time I've noticed this, that every time something new comes up, we assume it's toxic. Okay. If it's 5G, it's toxic. Well, you don't know that. All right. You see what I'm saying? So we tend to just have this protective shield, as it were. And so I think we're going to have to let our shields down, and we're going to have to take a chance. We're going to have a risk. We are, because, there's a risk with change, potentially in each person. But I'm thinking, aren't we ready for that now? And let's do it without having to, Carolyn Mace says, when the leaves fall off the trees, you don't go out there and glue them back on, right? And say, oh no, the leaves are falling. What will we do? Why? Because intrinsically, it will revolve. It will come back again, only greater, and the tree will be bigger and more, have more branches and more leaves. And it's so interesting to me that we see this happen over and over again on our planet, and we never relate it to ourselves. We never relate that I'm losing leaves. Let them go. Don't glue them back on. I want to emerge as something different. So with homeopathy specifically, I would love for the medical model to honestly say, welcome. There's room at the table for you. And I'd like the holistic model to say, hey, we are not dismissing the practicality of the medical model. We want that. We just want an opening for us to go further and deeper and be more profound without having, it's very unconscionable, I think, behavior, and not evolutionary, when you make something else derogatory to make yourself look better. I think it's unconscionable to do something to make yourself look better that demeans someone else. And we are in that cycle. We have no compunction about thinking that maybe I shouldn't do that. You know, I mean, you can get a fine for a parking ticket, but you can't get a fine for lying or not being transparent or being unconscionable, you know? And it's so interesting. Not that I want that, but I'm saying this is where we're focused. We're focused on parking, not how we treat each other. All right. So, and that's coming, and I think we also need to speak it more. You know, I feel like we need to stop negating everything and just speak what goodness it could bring.
Mhm.
And that goes in every, you know, it goes with different models of care. Go after each other rather than expand and incorporate. Oh, what's that word now? Inclusion, right? It's not only even in the realms of gender, it's a gender has brought that up to show us, well, we don't include the medical model in the holistic model, you know, or the medical model doesn't want to really be inclusive of the holistic model. I think that's where we're going wrong. But I also think that I'm not the only person who's noticing that. I think there are a lot of us who are calling for a shift. All
Yeah.
right. Right. You know,
Yeah.
and for that shift to be more inclusive. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And, that's kind of where I was going with, this whole idea of integrating the shadow, integrating the shadow in birth work too, because there's a shadow side to everything, right? And to me, what that means is like, as you speak of ideologies, right? We get kind of locked into these. Some people are in the medical model of care ideology, and anything outside of it, they just can't go there. And then you have people that are in the holistic ideology. And, it's interesting when you start getting into the nuance of, gosh, I could bring up so many subjects, vitamin K shots, there's some very strong ideology on the holistic side as well. And then there are people like me that kind of fall in the middle. I haven't given my children vitamin K shots at my home births, but I also see that, there are two sides to that story, and that there's a lot of nuance kind of in the evidence that we've seen. And, and so I try to give my clients informed consent that has a lot of the nuance included, that they can really see for themselves and make the decision from an educated place, and not just from some emotional gut reaction that is based on an ideology like, oh, well, that's not holistic, and I'm not going to go there. So again, to me, this comes down to like, we are on a precipice of a big change. And a big part of that is facing our fears. And, I was talking with some other colleagues recently about this, where is midwifery going? And I said, I think what it's going to come down to is, I think everybody spiritually on this planet, like this whole, everything that's going on right now is about facing our mortality. We have people that are trying to overcome mortality through science and medicine and, AI and all these things. And then we have, the reality that we face of like, well, at the end of the day, we're all still dying. And so, to me, that's where birth becomes, the decisions that we make about who attends our birth and how we birth come down to a spiritual decision. And that gives us the right to autonomy, because it is really between me and the universe, right? Me as the mother and as the vessel for this baby, and whatever I want to call that, God, the universe, death even. It's a conversation between us and that veil, right, between the realities. And so until we integrate that shadow of birth, like death is the shadow side of birth, is it not? It's like they're two sides of the same coin. And so we can't talk about, safety in birth or, honoring birth unless we also honor death and become comfortable with death. And I think that's where, you know, some of us are struggling against modern medicine because they're so adamant about, you know, making sure that nobody dies, right? Because it's a liability, maybe, but, you know, so yeah, I mean, I'm curious how you see that, if there's, you know, how do we do that work collectively so that we can stop the ideologies on either side and really start to integrate these two sides of, you know, that ideological spectrum, as well as integrating spiritually. How do we do that, Whapio?
So, all right. So what we're talking about, to your point, ideologies, and ideologies are basically fundamentalist beliefs that you have. Okay. And we all have them somewhere, and we're all divesting ourselves of them because we realize, oh, that doesn't work. That's very exclusive. So there. Okay. So that's what we mean by ideologies. And we are trying to not be caught in them, that like there's only one way. All right. So I'm glad that we're talking about it now, because sometimes we don't look at it that way. We just feel like these are my belief systems and, I'm holding true to them, which of course is your right to do that. But that's a glass ceiling, right? That's a glass ceiling on the top of your head if you can't see more. All right. But you know what? I say this all the time. A field of flowers doesn't all bloom at the same time. So we are really, addressing in many ways the women who have bloomed and are looking for caregivers who have bloomed as well, as it were, into what? Into the more conscious realms. Into birth is not just let's use birth. What is it? The medical definition, the expulsion of the contents of the uterus. Well, that's true. And it's practically true. All right. Very practical. But that's not what we want to come away with. All right. Having your uterus empty. We want to come away with a transformational journey.
Yes.
It defies ideologies and defies anything that's already here. And when we say transformational, it means you're going someplace we don't normally go. And what can you bring back from that place? So what I see, all right, once again, talking about the expansion. However, we came to this planet, I think, to participate in the duality, to learn how to be on our, right-handed and left-handed, to learn how to be male and female, hot and cold, day and night. We came here to understand more deeply the duality. So let's first of all stop making things a duality. Are you going to the medical model, or are you going to the holistic model? All right. Are you having your baby in a hospital or at home? We make those things matter too much, maybe. All right. And not focusing on, oh, you made a choice to have your baby somewhere. How can I facilitate that? Rather than, how can I tell you about all the things that are dangerous about the choice that you've made? All right. So let's let go of that. All right. And here's something. I mean, I want to say this. The medical model has a system, right? And what they had to offer women was safety, pretty much. And the testing and the scans and the appointments, that's pretty much what the medical model has offered. And then people got tired of that. Why? Because we've evolved, and that's not enough. All right. I mean, if I need those things, I would do them, but that's not enough just to say that's all I need or that's all I should have. So little by little, a holistic system was created. And I could read off 50 things, that are not in the medical model, but are in a holistic system. It's a system now. We have to look at this. It's a system of care, the holistic system. All right. And it has the same bottom line as the medical model. The things that we are suggesting, whether it's homeopathy, hypnotherapy, et cetera, yoga, balls, or the whole thing, it's no different really than the bottom line for the medical system. We want birth to be more straightforward, more pleasant, more easier, safer. Both of those models have the same goal, right? Okay. So when you realize that they have the same goal, you might think that, well, that's not so bad. We just need to up level it. Or, well, that's not so bad. We just need to focus people who really want holistic care over there. All right. But here's the problem. Both of those systems are running the risk of stopping or becoming an obstacle to evolution. Because both of those models end up telling women you need this. And the truth is you don't. You don't need anything. If, as you say, birth, healing, injury, whatever is between you and your creator, then why are we intimating that you can't have a birth without scans or and appointments, without, I don't want to pick a rag on anything. I think these are great things. Hypnotherapy, let's say that you have to have that, or things like that. No, the problem is, no, you don't. The problem is you are telling women what they need. And that was the problem in the medical model with all the tests. And it's the problem over here with people. I mean, frankly, I feel like a lot of the holistic system has become very monetized even, and capitalized and whatnot, which, I mean, I am very, very glad to see all the new things that are available for women. And if a pregnant woman wants those things, whether it's an ultrasound and a test or a yoga ball, right, and it's homeopathy, women have the right to do any of these things. But you know what? There's nothing that a woman needs except being right in herself. I have found that the one thing that women need, and this goes for all of us, healing, everything, is reassurance. Reassurance in themselves and reassurance in the people that they call to them. Reassurance in the fact that your power comes from within. It doesn't come from medicine. It doesn't come from the media. It doesn't come from money. It comes from within you. And giving birth, healing, going deep is an opportunity for transformation, to see that and to understand that I can walk through this world knowing that I'm taking the hooks out. There goes the media that doesn't have a hook in me. There goes the money. All right. There goes the medicine. I'm free at this point to experience my light and my endarkenment, my enlightenment and my endarkenment. They're both relevant. And in the way we speak our truth. But what would be really nice is if we really made an effort to speak our truth without hurting someone else. All right. So continue expanding, speak your truth, understand that we have two systems now we have two systems who are telling women what they want, and think about that in your practice. Tell women, you don't really need this, but if you want to, ... Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many layers there, right? Because what keeps coming to my head is like this idea of the illusion of safety. And
Yeah.
I say that not because, I mean, of course, in the holistic model, we want safety. Of course, we want a good outcome. Nobody wants a baby to die or a mom to die or a hemorrhage or, so it's like, of course. And this is where I feel like this growth edge is in all aspects of birth care right now, is that, okay, so we have midwives who are practicing in such a way that is almost more the modern medical model of care. And, some people call them midwives, and it's kind of this derogatory term now. And I don't like that. I think it just is what it is. And they're meeting a need in the community or a desire in the community, right? And then there are those who really want to try to maintain, the understanding that ultimately this birth is, that there are no guarantees, and that this birth is a transformational experience for the woman, for her family, for the midwife, for her baby. We're all there in this container of transmutation together. and that we can't guarantee safety, that there are no guarantees in life or death, but the one thing we can guarantee is that this will be a transformative experience. And, you know, this is something that I've tried to touch on, and it's a little difficult to even put the right words to, you know, but it's like that no matter what happens, it's like, you know, I tell people in my classes, like, if you have an emergency C-section, can you remain present and in love during that experience? Because we can't guarantee that everybody will have the perfect birth and the perfect outcome, but what we can do is try to use this as a crucible of spiritual transmutation and learning, and, you know, by remaining present, right? So
I can give you a story here.
yeah.
It's not from my practice, but it is from a graduate of the Matrona, and this is what she told me about. She was working as a doula at this time, and she tells men, the father of the baby or the partner, okay, that actually they hold the charge for the birth. And a lot of dads are like, well, I don't know about that, you know, but it's a profound thought. It's a deep thought. And oftentimes men will come back and say, so what do you mean I would hold the charge? And I say, well, you know, legally, lawfully, socially, culturally, religiously, familially, men hold the charge. They are the protectors. They take care of their family. Oh, okay. So what do you mean I'm in birth? What would I have to do? Would I have to read a book or something? No, you just have to be you. And if there's something that's going on, you know, that looks weird, or if there's something, you know, just be you. And remember, you have instincts, just like your partner, your wife, your mother, the mother does. You know, you can act on those instincts. I mean, who knows a woman better than you? So I make a really great case for teaching about this, about women and doulas, knowing that in our culture, males have a lot of power to hold the charge. So, okay. So this doula talked to the man about this, the dad, and he was like, well, I can do that. Sure. So during the pregnancy, the mom had a seizure. And no one was really able to find out why. It was only one, and it was, you know, she was fine. The baby was fine, as much as, you know, you can be. She was very confused about why she had a seizure, but nothing happened again. So they made plans to have they have made plans to have a vaginal hospital birth. Okay. And they were really kind of, they really were kind of attached to that. They wanted a vaginal birth for sure. All right. So they made plans like that. And then all of a sudden, she's in labor, and they go to the hospital. Mom, dad, doula go to the hospital. And she said they were put in a very small room. She said, you know, she said, I felt like it used to be a broom closet or something, because there was a bed, and then there was room for maybe a person to stand on either side, but that's probably about it. All right. And she said, all of a sudden, in the labor, the bells and whistles somehow went off. The mom had a seizure. And people came flying down the hall, you know, and just coming into the room to where it was packed. She said, the doula told me this. She said the dad and I were like squashed against the wall, you know. And she said, and this is not to, you know, blame anyone, but she said the truth is that there were a lot of people in the room, and not anybody was really in charge. And they were telling women all kinds of things, like sit up, no, lay her down, like put it right in her mouth, give her a drink of water. You know, she said the dad and I, we looked at each other like, whoa, you know, when this doctor comes in, skirts flying, you know, and so on and so forth. And so the dad, he just kind of steps up a little bit, and he says, there's too many people in this room. You need to leave. Well, everybody left. And then, and as the doctor was on her way out, he said, Doc, will you stay with us? Well, she said, well, of course. And he said, now what's going on? And the doc said, well, she had a seizure. We don't know what precipitated it right now. Everything seems fine though. All right. I mean, fine as you could be. And, that's what happened. And he said, well, what do you think? What do you suggest that we do? And she said, well, I'm pretty clear that I would, if it were me, I would have a C-section because we don't know what's really going on. All right. And she said, I feel like that might be the most safe option. So the dad went up to because he and the doc were sitting down at the edge of the bed. Okay. He went up and stood by his wife, and he said, so how do you feel about this? And she said, oh, there's no doubt in my mind that I would have a C-section. She said, you know, that's terrifying to go into a seizure and not know what's happening, being pregnant. She said, oh, I definitely want a C-section. He said, you sure now, and you don't want to, she said, no, my darling, I want a C-section. So he said, okay, doc, we're going to have a C-section. We wanted to have something different, but we're going to have a C-section. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, well, okay, let me go and get everything ready. We'll go ahead and do it now. And she said, well, wait a minute before you leave. And he said, come on up here. He said, we didn't want the C-section, but we're going to have it. And I think it's the right thing. He said, now, doc, I want you to promise me that you are going to give my wife the highest and best C-section you've ever done. I want you to pull out all the stops and give her the most high and holy C-section on the planet. Can you do that? Well, she looked at him and her and the mom, and she said, I will. And then she went down to the mom's feet and she held her feet and she said to the mom, don't worry about a thing. I've got you. Out she went. Now, it could be like that. It could be that we raise the consciousness of birth. She was so happy at that doctor, I think, that she was asked to do that. It gave her a mission. Yeah. And the mom and dad felt satisfied, in no way that they were robbed of something, because she was going to get the highest and holiest C-section on the planet. All right. My point is, it can always be like that.
And we have to ask for it.
You
right?
Do. At this juncture, yeah. At this level of our evolution, we have to ask for things. If we want to collaborate, oftentimes we have to put our hand out first.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll do it. No problem.
Yeah. And that, that's a beautiful story. And it speaks very much to that, not only the father, but the reality that we will get the standard of care that we, birthing families, ask for, right? Yeah. If all we are asking for is the truth or illusion of safety, then that's about all we're going to get. If we ask for a transformational experience, then that's what we can help bring forth, right?
Yes, somebody doing their best and being inspired to do their best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it makes me think of a little bit different story, but just a brief story that I had heard. I want to say, I forget what book it was in, but of a father and mother. They spoke Spanish. They were Spanish speaking, and she had a hemorrhage. And the midwife was just like, we need to stop this bleeding. And so he just looked in her eyes and they just repeated, no más sangre, no more blood, no more blood. And she stopped bleeding, and it's like, to me, these stories speak to this third consciousness in the room, or maybe fourth, if you count baby, of God, spirit, whatever, this oversoul consciousness that we can draw on, and the importance of maintaining an environment that is respecting that relationship and that connection to whatever it is that's on the other side. And I keep, thinking of it as the other side of death or birth. It's like we are touching that veil in birth, and honoring the fact that we are touching that veil. So I think of these amazing doctors that are able to offer that level of care when they're asked for it, or maybe because they're just amazing human beings. And it's you're asking that person in that moment to be aware of the fact that we are touching something sacred right now. But we are not just taking out the contents of the uterus and making sure that the baby's alive and the mom, we really are touching something sacred. We are touching that veil between life and death. Yes. So yeah. I
think we should just give ourselves permission to go there. So many people resist the idea, the concept, and the language even, of altered states. Oh, well, what does that mean? You're going to be on drugs in your pregnancy? Well, right. Maybe you are. You might be on Pitocin, and but we're not talking about that. Okay. It's once again, I think we're afraid of change. We want to transform, but we don't go into the altered states enough for it to make a difference. You know what I'm saying? If going into an altered state, like alpha, beta, theta, was popular, or we did that more, or it had associations with bringing back knowledge instead of spacing out, or something like that. These things are germane to us to go into altered states of consciousness, non-ordinary reality, whatever you want to call it, and bring back information. Einstein says the problems that we have today are not going to be solved by the thinking that created them. So what is he saying? He's saying, go off, go deeper, go out into theta and delta, and bring back the solutions. I think we need to get comfortable with this, because these are germane to our earthly existence, the ability to go into 4 different states of consciousness, know that you're there, and create right action there. We're locked into ordinary reality. All right. And it really stunts our growth. It really does. Yes. So.
Yeah. And I love that you say it that way, because I'm even now trying to compartmentalize it into like the scientific way of thinking versus, it's like the us versus them. And it's like, no. All of that is ideology. You can be a scientist, you can be an atheist, even. You can have the most scientific mode of thinking as a medical doctor or whatever, and still be able to access that delta, theta brainwave state and retrieve information and have, these, this connection to the spiritual frequencies of the other side, if you will, without even having to call it spiritual, right? It's just, it really is a natural phenomenon of our biology, right?
Yes,
like
it's
nothing frou-frou about it, but we've got to get out of that language of making it frou-frou so that the people who are, in this scientific evidence-based birth, mode of thinking can still understand the accessibility of that and the utility of it, right?
Well, right. And we need to talk more about situations where the father says no más sangría and it completely works, and that's considered a miracle. Whereas if we give you Pitocin, well, that's what you really need. But here's a miracle over here. Right. And there are a number of thinkers who believe that they're not miracles. They could be everyday events if we looked at them like that. Right. And what the value of going into an altered state? It's to expand your knowledge. It's like having aha moments, like, oh, I get it. And you're like, I want more of those. Well, that's the same thing that we're talking about right here, right now. You've gone into a non-ordinary state of being and consciousness, and something occurred to you that had never occurred to you before. And now you see it and you know it's really true, and you're so excited and you want more of it and you're inspired. That's all we're talking about here, going into those states that allow us to do that so we can bring something for the greater good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, it seems like as more families and women get into that place of trust and, as I said, kind of doing that shadow work, working with your fears and turning them over and looking at them. And, one thing that you talked about once was the idea of like running your fear. And you had mentioned, you'd had a fear of being arrested, right? And so then instead of putting that aside and going, oh, I'm not looking at that, it's like, okay, one day you were just like, fine, let me just run this and go through it. And so you led yourself through that experience and imagining it all happening. And, I forget the details, but maybe somebody hemorrhaged and you died and all of that, right? So
That was the setup.
yeah, it's like, this is, I think, the real collective shadow work that we are doing and need to do more. And, coming to terms with like, and as a birth worker, it's very important to stay on top of that and to allow yourself to metabolize that fear rather than try to compartmentalize it and walk it away, so that you can come to this present moment and, and be able to access that altered state where if the hemorrhage does arise, as you mentioned, like the midwives that can just become the woman's uterus and ask it to clamp down, right? It's like that comes from a place of trust that even that whatever is arising right now it just is. We don't have to attach a right or wrong to it. We can just be with what is, and that allows us to run that trust and that frequency that that allows us to become a woman's uterus or our own uterus and ask it to stop bleeding, right?
Yeah. And, something that we look at a lot in our year-long program is something called the Tao of midwifery. And I'm always looking for little things like this. It's really the Tao of the wise one, but I find it so relevant. All right. And there's a couple of lines in there. It's real short and powerful. The wise one performs their work by doing nothing. They teach without speaking a word. Things arise and they let them come. Things leave and they let them go. Creating, not possessing, working, but laying no claim. And then when it's done, they release it. And so it lasts forever. So that's a really beautiful way of looking at the world. But the one line that people get stuck on is things arise and they want to say, and we handle it. Things arise and we fix it. Things arise. Well, the Tao says things arise and we let them come. Leave and we let them go. And that's the part of the shadow side. We don't let them go. We stay in a very wounded place. We accommodate wounds. We dominate with wounds. We have a lot of wounds that I feel are obstacles to evolution. Okay. And I think, a lot of the things that you're saying are very, very pertinent and well said, well explained and expressed. And underneath a lot of all of this is the wound. Okay. The fear is a wound. Yeah. And it might be a very relevant fear, but still, what are you going to do about it? You're going to let it come and then you're going to let it go because all right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have a collective wound around death, right? Everybody has, some experience or another of a wound around death. And so that's what we're working out through this dichotomous experience of life and death, when, you know, in my opinion, we really are eternal beings, and all of that might be an illusion anyway, but we're working out this, you know, something around that. And I personally feel like, as a birth worker, I have to be very comfortable with death. That doesn't mean I'm going to be comfortable with somebody dying in my care. That's not what that means, right? But it's a very subtle shift that has to happen in each of us to be able to just go, okay, this is where I find myself on this plane of existence, in this time in history, you know, in this body, and these are the rules of the game here. And it doesn't discriminate. Death does not discriminate, you know? And so, you know, and then from that place, can I come to a place of also trusting that maybe things that happen are arising because they are meant to, and it's not mine to know, you know, what somebody else's life experience is meant to be, or how the outcome is meant to be, you know?
I say that all the time. It's my mantra, and I don't think I could do this work without it. And it's very simple. It's not my privilege to know the life and death of another human being. I just accept what I'm being shown. It's not my privilege to know that, even.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Can you work that work?
Right.
Can
Right.
you sit in a situation of life and death and say, it's not my privilege to know the destiny of another human being.
Mhm.
I take a step back and let
Mhm.
what is meant to happen. And that doesn't mean I don't do anything. It means
Right.
I will bring the best of my knowledge and care, but I will also accept the outcome.
Mhm. So this kind of brings me around to another subject I wanted to bring up in the birth world right now, which I'm really curious your opinion on. And that is, there is such a trend right now of induction. Induction at 39 weeks. That is, I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm going to get induced. Why are you getting induced? Oh, I don't know. You know, the doctor says, and you know, by all means, of course, there is a place and time for everything. And there are certainly times where induction, I think, does make sense. But to me, it sounds like there's this new ideology of, well, if we don't get to 40 weeks, we actually may have better outcomes. And I find myself questioning, are these doctors that are inducing at 39 weeks or even 40 weeks for unclear reasons, are they trying to know the destiny of another human being? Are they imposing their, you know, projecting themselves onto that person's birth destiny? And I'm just curious if you've even, you know, noticed or heard about this trend, you know, and what your thoughts are on it.
Well, I think it's once again, modern medicine wants to outwit nature, you know, and that's been very key in our whole human development on the planet. So you can't blame anybody. You know, this is a template that's here. We can do better. We can do better than nature. All right. It was all based on that study that said, if we lose most of our babies between, you know, 39 and 41 weeks. So if we take them all out at 39, infant mortality will go down.
Mm-hmm.
And many doctors at first were like, no, we're not going to induce women. That's not. And then when they saw these statistics, they were like, because I don't want any dead babies on my watch. You know what I mean? And all of that. So if you go on the AMA site now and say, you know, it says, when should I have my baby? Well, if you're 39 weeks and healthy, ask your doctor. It'd be perfectly okay to have your baby now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason undergirding it is that if we take the babies out, if we decide that these babies are ready to come, if we decide that, and we say, and then we justify it by saying, well, so let's take them out now because they're ready to come. They can breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, you know, here's what's missing. A lot of the altruistic structures in a baby's brain happens in those last couple of weeks. And we need more altruistic people on the planet. So let's allow those babies to develop those areas of their brains that happen 39, 40, maybe even 41.
Uh-oh.
Past that, I think we're doing civilization in general a disservice. Okay. I think having the numbers be better, I don't know, I guess years from now we'll say the same thing. Are the numbers less, or do we have less infant mortality? And then we'll have to, we have to deal with it, because once again, it's done to be careful and conscientious. It's not done to hurt anybody. All right. The baby's it's maybe misunderstood in the sense that you think the baby's ready, but how would you know that?
Right.
Just because the baby can breathe. And I'm giving you a really good example of what we're losing if we induce all these babies, the altruistic potency of each person. So what I think about that is I feel like many of the things that the medical model has just, offered to us have not really worked. And I think this is one of them that is not going to really work for the evolution of our planet. I think we need more altruism, kindness and love and caring and inclusion and so forth. But, if a woman decides to be induced, that's her choice.
Sure.
And I know we all know that, but
yeah. I've been curious about, because they say the lungs are mature, but aren't the lungs continuing to produce surfactant? And, so my question is, are the lungs truly as mature as they are meant to be? Just because they're mature enough to breathe, does that mean that they are going to be optimal for the rest of their life? Are there subtle ways that this may affect even, the lungs, for life? And the brain, of course. I mean, I'm fascinated by what parts of the brain you might be speaking of, and I might have to dig a little deeper now, because it's like we don't know if there are subtle layers that are still being added right up until the birth date, right? Yeah. And then, of course, we're only looking at one thing, infant mortality, right? We're not looking at the experience of the mother and the fact that a lot of these inductions are going to end up in C-section or, augmentation of some kind that can be damaging to the emotional, spiritual experience of the mother. We're not looking at, the increased rates potentially of postpartum depression because of labor augmentation measures, right? And Pitocin and all of that. So if we put all of it on the table, is this actually a better thing, right?
I don't think so. I don't think physiologically or psychologically, either way, it just doesn't really have the benefits. Yeah. And so we're making a good case out of it, because physiologically and psychologically, these could be deteriorated,
detrimental.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. It really gets me every time when I'll ask a mom, on a Facebook forum, why are you getting induced? And they're just like, I don't know. I'm like, well, it's a good idea to know, because if you have a good reason, then absolutely. If you're having severe preeclampsia or even eclampsia and your doctor says this baby needs to come out today, okay, that might be a good enough reason, for the safety of your own self and baby. But gosh, with just these nebulous answers coming from doctors or patients that really just aren't clear on what the doctor's reasoning was, it makes me fearful that they are just kind of slipping it under the radar and actually not doing it for a medical reason, you know.
Oh, when you read
You
the
know,
website,
happens.
when you read the website, you're going to see how it's very soft pedaled. Okay.
Mhm.
It almost makes sense. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it's about control. All right. Doctors, I think, know that if you want a certain outcome, you've got to kind of control the factors. All right. So their way of controlling is, something like this would be their way of controlling infant mortality or a woman losing her baby or whatever. And it remains to be seen whether that was a chapter of whoops, that didn't work out or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, are we prioritizing the doctor's comfort or even his statistics and his liability over the experience of the mother and the baby, you know? And
That
I
has
guess,
happened.
you know, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you have other ideas, but I think, you know, the future of birth and making these changes is going to come down to families being educated and autonomous and going in and saying, this is what we would like. We would like the most sacred C-section on the planet, if that's what it comes down to, right? Or, you know, if we must induce, let's do it in this way, you know, or you name it, right?
Right. I mean, I knew a woman one time, she was my client and then she moved away. And when she moved away, she moved to a little town. And they only had like 2 doctors and both of them were kind of, like ordinary strict doctors, this and this. And both of them insisted that she have a ultrasound in her practice with them. And it was not negotiable. They said, we do ultrasounds, and we're going, it's non-negotiable. So she called me up and she was like, what should I do? How should I prepare? And here's what I told her. I said, well, then make it the most amazing and holy and blessed ultrasound on the planet. You can do that. Because if you are afraid, what you're doing is you're imposing that, you're calling to you that fear that this ultrasound will hurt you. Make yourself bless it so that it never hurts you or your baby. Bless it. It's going to happen. So bless it. If you can't change it, so bless it. The same thing with the C-section. All right. With the induction, your doctors, we just have to learn how to bless things too, right? And, kind of go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, this is all, I think, really, really important information. And now my son's walking in. Hold on, I'm almost done. Yeah, and something that I really wanted to cover deeply with you today. So I'm really grateful that we got the opportunity to tie all these things together. We just all have so much growing that we're doing right now, and having the language to be able to contextualize that growth and where we're going is really important. And I really want us young midwives to be able to learn from people like yourself, who are carrying this frequency of traditional midwifery care as well, and have been through this wave of modern medicine and seen the changes over the last 40 plus years. I would imagine it's probably pretty exciting for you, to see people like myself coming in and going like, okay, let's reinvigorate this whole paradigm, and it's equally exciting for us to be able to meet with people like yourself and just go, okay, like we're taking the torch and we're gonna shift things together,
And here's how I would like to see them shifted, because over 40 years, if you ask me what changes I have seen, I could say, oh, there have definitely been some changes, but they're not changes in the caregivers. They're changes in the families. They're the families that want their own birth. This comes across my desk all the time. Whapio, I want my own birth. I don't want the hospital's idea of a birth. I don't want my midwife's birth. or her idea of how birth should be. I want my birth. And, you know, it's taken a while, but because women weren't ready for that, but now they are. And you know what I'm saying? And doctors often treat women like they're still back in those ages where women didn't know anything. And we had to do this and we have to manage them. But that's not true. More and more women and families are wanting their own birthing experiences. And I can see the day when doctors and midwives will be on retainer, because women and families are doing so well, but they also may want someone to have their back.
Mhm.
All right. Not to manage the whole shebang. All right. Not to manage, just to have their back.
Yeah.
So there, that's that's what I think about the future of birth, that families are going to, we're going to see the insistence on the return of birth to the family by the family.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
And I
Well, thank
welcome
you so
that.
much. This has been
Well,
a really wonderful conversation.
well, I agree. And I really thank you for the opportunity. And I thank you for all the wonderful things that you have said. You know, I feel like it's been a good back and forth for us, because I feel like you've articulated many of these concepts very well.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for that.
Yeah, we always have great conversations. I'm really glad that we finally got to do this. And yeah, just to reiterate, you know, Whapio, if anybody is interested in birth work and doula or midwifery work, check out the Matrona, matrona.com, right? Is that it? Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, just an incredible program. And you are just such an amazing teacher. And we're so glad that you're still with us and still teaching, still going at it. I'm glad that you're back from your hiatus and ready to teach a new cohort pretty soon, right? And
In
yeah,
September. Yeah.
awesome.
Come spend a year with us. You will love it. You will be devoted to birth, and I already said this, but what you leave with will be confidence and competence, and knowing that you will find your niche in the big, wide birthing world.
Awesome. Yay. Well, thank you.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Okay.